Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
Our opinion is that this didn't impact the game. 55 seconds later, I didn't say it didn't impact the game.
He's a clown.
A reporter says, so then why are you guys apologizing? Like, why are you guys here apologizing if you didn't think it impacted the game? And he said, we're apologizing because we broke the rules. Like, oh, come on, buddy. Like,
they're not sorry that they broke the rules. They're sorry that they got caught.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, some TV suggestions,
The future of the Montreal Canadiens,
and the Elam Ending.
But first, the latest on the Houston Astros.
Okay, Skip, so we might need to change the name of our show. Instead of the Skip and Josh podcast, we might have to call it This Week with the Houston Astros, because it seems to be all we talk about every week.
Major League Baseball.
And as you said last week, you would think that eventually the story would die, but every single day, new information comes out that we didn't know about the day before. So it's not like we're repeating stuff that we already talked about. We're talking about new stuff. The latest thing is, I don't know about you, but I'm very, very disappointed in David Ortiz for what he said about Mike Fiers. Did you hear what he said?
It's awful. It's awful. It's awful.
Well, because he's a guy of influence. Like, people will listen to what he says and they'll believe what he says. And so those people who might have been on the fence or who didn't even care about Mike Fiers now are going to hate the guy. And I think Mike Fiers is a hero.
He called him a snitch, which is so, like, it's so bogus, you know, because we wouldn't have found out any of this without Mike Fiers, honestly. He was the start, you know, and in every, and I know it's a bad comparison, but like in every industry, in every walk of life, businesses and the government, like this guy is called a whistleblower. Like that's what he is. And the whistleblowers are protected. They're protected in all walks of life, you know, because we want people to come out and talk about injustices or things that they perceive are illegal or wrong without getting retribution from their employers or from whoever, right? So, and basically Mike Fiers he's going to get blackballed and his career is going to kind of be over. He was a borderline pitcher anyways, but like it sucks for him. And the fact that David Ortiz is coming out and calling him a snitch, that's really, really lousy. It's really lousy.
So it's interesting because, as you alluded to, if he didn't say anything, no one would ever know anything. And now all the other players on the other 29 teams are obviously very angry at the Houston Astros. So wouldn't you think they should be thanking Mike Fiers for doing this rather than the opposite?
I guess they feel that, like, what happens in the locker room or should stay in the locker room, which is this archaic way of looking at it. Yes, conversations that happen he shouldn't out those or things that they talk about, team meetings, and you know, I could see how like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas type of situation. Like I get that, but like not this. You know, not this a systematic scheme of cheating. You know, like no, that shouldn't happen. I get what Ortiz said. He's like, why didn't he come out? Why didn't he come out while it was happening? But like, you could say that about every player on the Astros. Why didn't they come out while this was happening? He's the only one that had the courage to come out at all. You know? So I'm just mad at David Ortiz for this. I'm disappointed in him, you know?
The other thing you mentioned is that he's going to be blackballed, and when his contract ends with Oakland, he's probably not going to sign with any other team. But again, I'm going to ask you a similar question. Wouldn't you think that other teams would want this guy on their team because of what he did?
Well, it's like, it's this myth, or maybe it's a perception of like a distraction. You know, teams just don't want to sign a guy who's a distraction, you know, unless the guy's so good, which is like the biggest hypocrisy of all, because they'll always say, we don't want to sign this guy because he's a big hypocrite. But if Mike Fiers was the best player in baseball, he'd be signed, you know? So they are going to use the excuse of like, we don't want this guy around our team because we don't want all the distraction that the media are going to bring and all the everything that follows him. But it's just an excuse, really.
Right. So Odell Beckham's not a distraction, right?
Well, exactly. Odell Beckham is the hugest distraction. But the thing is, he's so talented that teams are like, oh, I guess it's okay, you know? But I mean, even with the most talented players like Odell Beckham, eventually he's going to reach the end of the line, right? Like what we're seeing with Antonio Brown, right? He's still not signed. Like Antonio Brown's the best receiver in football, right? Top 2, 3, whatever you want to, however you rank him. But like, he's still not on a team, and I don't know when he's going to be on a team, because people have reached their limit with him, I guess.
So the other person I want to talk about, I know that Rob Manfred has been taking a lot of heat for the punishment that he gave, and everyone's saying that it wasn't enough, and all the things that he said in the last, couple of weeks or months or whatever it is. But someone who deserves a lot of scrutiny, who hasn't gotten much, is the head of the Baseball Players Association, Tony Clark. Because I don't know if you heard any of the things that he said this week, but he is the biggest hypocrite on the planet as far as I'm concerned. Because here he is defending the Houston Astros. And I heard this week that even before Rob Manfred began his investigation, Tony Clark insisted and said, you can do what you want, but you have to give all those Astros players immunity. Because if you don't, we're going to fight it and we're going to win.
Right. Look, the baseball union is the only actually powerful sports union for I don't know why they are, and they have a lot of say. And Tony Clark, I saw what he came out with. I saw what he said this week, and he was basically saying, I'm going to always fight for my players. That's what I do. I'm always going to do it. I'm not going to apologize for that. And I get that. I get that you want to fight for your players, but you also have to fight for what's right. You know, if your players are doing something illegal, you shouldn't be sticking up for them. You know, this is like, morality 101, so you if you're choosing to stand behind this whole group of players who systematically cheated the game, then it reflects on all the players even worse after. I don't know where this is going to end, Josh. I don't know when this is going to end. Are we going to be talking about this next week? Are we going to be talking about this in a month? Like, I just don't know. But like, so Matthew Berry, right? Matthew Berry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't listened to his podcast in a while, but he's like the foremost like fantasy football, fantasy baseball guy. So he put a poll on his Twitter. If you could eliminate all Astros players from your fantasy baseball league, in other words, no one in the league can have an Astro on their team, would you do it? What a question, right?
You could do that. You could totally do that.
37,000 people answered his poll, and 60% said they would like to ban Astros from fantasy baseball, which is like, just shows the perception out there is like, no one wants anything to do with these guys, right? So I know you came out against revoking their title, right? You don't think it's going to have any, it's not going to mean anything. And we can debate whether actually taking away their title will actually do anything. I think we're much closer to Manfred actually taking away their title today than we were 3 weeks ago when we started talking about this. Don't you think that the ball is sort of rolling in the direction of he's going to have to punish harder?
Yes, it does seem like that. But then it sort of makes him look worse because he already laid out the punishment. Now he's going to come back and say, oh, well, I made a mistake. I didn't punish them severely enough. Here's my new punishment. I mean, that makes him look worse, I think. Don't you?
It does make him look worse. What's working against Manfred, what's working against him is that all this came out right before the season started, and now it's still lingering around, and it's spring training now, right? So that's why you have sound bites from Mike Trout and from other players, right? Because they're there at spring training and reporters are there. Mike Trout's not sitting at home, getting a call from Associated Press. He's there with like 16 mics in front of his face. So Manfred's fighting a very big uphill PR battle. I think he felt that this story would go away once games start happening. but I think it's going to be the opposite. I think this is going to linger the whole season. Did you hear about this? There's an over-under.
No.
How many Astros will be hit by pitch this season?
Okay, and what's the number?
84 or 85. I don't know if that's a big number or a small number. That might be a normal number. I don't know. But.
Well, I'm going to take under, and I'll tell you why. I don't think any Astros are going to get hit by pitch, and I'll tell you why. They actually, in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, the Los Angeles Angels play against the Houston Astros 6 or 7 times in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, like a home and away series. Mm-hmm. And actually, I heard an interview with Joe Madden yesterday, the new manager of the Angels, and they asked him point blank, are your pitchers going to throw at the Astros hitters? And he said flat out, no, we are absolutely not going to throw at them. We had a conversation about it in our clubhouse. We're going to have another conversation about it, and we're going to have as many conversations as we need to have about it, but we're not going to throw at any Astros players. And I'm pretty sure most, if not all, managers are going to say that to their players because they want to actually win games.
Yeah.
So if you throw at a guy, you're going to get probably thrown out of the game, suspended for additional games, maybe even fined as well. So that's just gonna hurt your own team. I don't know why you would do it. I get you want to get even. I get it, but
yeah, no, I completely agree with you because they've come out baseball and said that they're going to levy suspensions if they feel the players are throwing at Astros on purpose. So it's like they're actually protecting the cheaters now, which is even worse. The other thing that's come out of this is that there may be some kind of attendance boom in baseball because of this. Indirectly. I don't know if you've heard about this, but when Barry Bonds was on the Giants and he had all these steroid rumors swirling around him and he was basically, the number one hated player in all of baseball, the Giants had the highest road attendance in baseball during those years, right? So there's a lot of, I heard Buster Olney talking about this on his podcast, saying that there's a good chance that the Astros are going to have very, very high road attendance wherever they're going because a lot of people are going to come out to see, is Bregman going to get hit today? Is someone going to hit Altuve on purpose? Is there going to be a fight? I would see that if the Dodgers were playing them, but you're right. If it's a regular game against the Angels or against Kansas City Royals, or is anything going to happen? No, I don't think so. Right.
Well, the Dodgers and Astros don't play each other this year unless they meet in the World Series. But of course, a lot of Dodgers fans can go to Angels games because it's not that far away. And the Angels and Astros play each other quite a bit because they're in the same division. So, and I also heard, in addition to what you just said, I also heard that fans are going to try to bring those metal garbage can lids into the ballpark and bang them during the game. I heard that too. So
yeah, I heard that too.
Now, another
imagine. Remember the World Cup? Well, you're not a big soccer guy, but remember the World Cup a few years ago? I think it was in South Africa with the Vuvuzela, those horns, and they were all the time. The games were so unwatchable on TV because all you heard was this noise. My wife called it the bees because it sounded like a swarm of bees. Everywhere.
Yes.
Right? Imagine if people are banging garbage cans during Astros game, the entire game. Holy smokes. It's going to be madness.
I don't know if security is going to let them into the ballpark with those things. But I had another point I wanted to mention because you were saying how to remove all Astros from your fantasy baseball league, which you could do that if you want to do that. But what do you do? No point in that. What do you do with players who A, are no longer on the Astros, but they were in 2017, or B, what happens if they get traded tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now to another team? What do you do with those guys? Don't you find it interesting that players and I just listed a few here, Will Harris, Marwin Gonzalez, Mike Fiers, Tony Kemp, Dallas Keuchel, and Charlie Morton have all been embraced by their new teams, although they're just as guilty as Justin Verlander and Alex Bregman because they knew exactly what was going on the entire time. But because they're on a different team now and because they're going to try and help their new team win games, the other players are like, oh, these guys are fine. It's just the guys that are still on the Astros that we don't like. So that's hypocritical if you ask me.
It's a huge double standard. The fact that Marwin Gonzalez and Charlie Morton are looked at as less of cheaters than just because they're not on the team anymore, and it comes back to people are saying players should be suspended, right? And I've heard the argument Well, no, it's not fair to suspend Marwin Gonzalez now because he's not on the team anymore. So now you're penalizing his new team. Who cares? If he cheated, he cheated. I don't care what team he's on now. That's their own team's fault for not the new team's fault for not doing the due diligence. You know.
The other thing you were talking about,
it's never going to end, Josh.
You were talking about removing the title, and you know what? Manfred may end up, vacating the World Series championship. Who knows? And that might give him some good PR for a little while, maybe. But I don't think the players would actually be upset about that because they got the trophy. It was presented to them the day they won the World Series. They celebrated. They had their parade. They've got their World Series money for winning. They they were able to say for the next year, we are World Series championships. So they've already reaped the benefit of being World Series champions. The only thing that would really bother the players, there's really only two things. You suspend them for a full season and you take away their salary for a full season. That's the only thing that would bother them. And neither of those things are going to happen anyway. We both know that's not going to happen.
No, but I've saw floated out, like, what about like a 20-game suspension for all these players or a 50-game suspension? But again, I don't think that's going to happen either. So, but what did you hear? Did you hear, isn't there supposed to, I thought it was supposed to have come out this week, but apparently it didn't. Whatever report they're supposed to come out about the Red Sox from 2018.
A week ago, I heard that report was supposed to come out this week. Now the week has gone by and I haven't heard a thing.
Yeah, it'll be amazing to hear how Big Papi's story will change if the Red Sox are implicated in a kind of grave way. Although I find it difficult to see how there's going to be the level of proof on the Red Sox, but I guess we'll find out, right?
Yeah, I'm very curious to see. I want the Red Sox to be caught, or I want to find out that the Red Sox actually did cheat in 2018 for one reason and one reason only, because Cody Bellinger was raving about his new teammate Mookie Betts about a week ago when they acquired him in a trade. So I want to hear what Cody Bellinger has to say now after he finds out that the Red Sox cheated in 2018. I'd love to hear that because for all I know, they sit right next to each other in the clubhouse. So that's going to be very interesting to hear.
It's all good stuff. It gives us a lot of stuff to talk about. I mean, hopefully at one point this year, we'll start talking about actual baseball games instead of this stuff. But I mean, I see us talking about this cheating stuff for at least the next few weeks because there's new stuff coming out every day,
Absolutely. But we could move on to a different sport now.
The National Basketball Association.
Please, go ahead.
So I don't watch a lot of NBA basketball. In fact, I hardly watch any NBA basketball unless Zion Williamson's playing. That's the only time I ever watch. And even then, I only watch maybe one quarter of the game. I certainly don't watch the All-Star game or any of the festivities surrounding it, but I wanted to specifically watch the fourth quarter of the All-Star game because I wanted to see how this Elam Ending worked out.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that for the most part, I loved it. Now, the fourth quarter, I timed it. It actually took, in real time, it took 45 minutes to play, which is a little longer than I was expecting. But you didn't see any intentional fouling. You didn't see, there were some fouls and there were some free throws, but they weren't the intentional type. What slowed down the fourth quarter was they had a bunch of replay reviews, which I can't believe they actually did that in an All-Star game, but that's a whole other story. But I like the Elam Ending so much that I think they should use it in regular season games. I know it's not going to happen in the middle of a season, but I think they should use it in regular season games. And I think they should use it instead of the last 4 minutes of the game. They should do it for the entire game. That's how much I liked it.
So, what would it be? In your world, it would be first team to 100?
Well, 100 is kind of low, right? Because every team gets to 100 these days. And in fact, they get to probably 115, 120, I think, because you see final scores are crazy high these days. So, I don't know, pick a number, 115, 120, whatever it is. And, just play until that score. And then I think you'll see... I think you'll see better basketball because you won't have teams milking the clock at the end of the half or at the end of the game. You won't have any of that.
Well, it'll be a totally different game. It'll be complete new strategies. There'll be complete new ways of playing. It's a different game. It would be a completely different game. It would be interesting to see, let's say the G League adopt this so that we could actually see how it works like in real games, because you know how it is. Every coach, there's always going to be the guys that are going to figure out ways to exploit that system, right? And they're going to find the weaknesses of that system and what they have to do there and what the strategies are going to be. So, I think the Elam Ending is getting too much credit for the success of the NBA All-Star Game. I think it's like it got them. Everyone's like, it got them to try. That got them to try? They could try whenever they want.
Right.
Don't they try when they play regular basketball? When they play a normal basketball game with regular NBA rules, don't they try? Like, if they wanted to try, they could try. They just choose not to. And then in this situation, they chose, we're going to try for the last 45 minutes.
So, yes, they do try, but you know as well as I do that during the regular season, some players, they don't try 100% for every game. They don't.
No, of course. Yes, you're right.
In the playoffs, you don't have to put in gimmicks or whatever. I wouldn't even call this a gimmick, actually. I'm sorry for using that word. But during the regular season, there are so many games that are meaningless. So many games, like there's load management. So sometimes your best player doesn't even play in the game, let alone try.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And I certainly liked it. And I thought before they even used it, I thought this was a great idea, because one of the things that frustrates me so much about basketball, whether it's NBA or college, is the last 3 or 4 minutes where, you see the team that's losing continuously foul. Now, if you did use this for the entire game, and I don't think that's ever going to happen in our lifetime. I know that I'm dreaming, obviously, but if you did use it for the entire game, I think it would just be an advantage to the team that is better, because if a team that's really good goes into the game saying, okay, as soon as we get to 120, this game's over. Some games might only take an hour. Like we could get to 120 in no time because we're so good. So let's get to 120. Let's put this game away as quickly as possible. Let's get on the plane and go home. I mean, I'm not suggesting that that's a good thing, because maybe you want to be there for more than an hour. Maybe you want to be there for 2 hours. I don't know, as a fan. But I just think this is a brilliant idea.
The reason why it's never going to happen is because of television. Because you'll never be able to know how long these games are going to be. Right. Right?
Exactly.
Like, a game could be 5 hours. What if no one can hit shots? The game could last forever. Or the game, like you said, the game could be so short, that then what, So there's things to work out there, I guess. But yeah, look, applause to the NBA for trying something. Because the All-Star game was a joke, and at least they tried something.
At the very least, if you're not going to do it for the whole game, at the very least, in the regular season, any game that goes into overtime, they should use this. At the very least.
That would be good, actually. When it goes to overtime, you say, okay, first team to score 15 points or whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, you already sort of have that in football. And I mean, you don't exactly have it in baseball, but each team in football and in baseball, when a game goes into overtime or extra innings, each team gets their chance on offense. And then the other team gets their chance. Actually, in football, the other team doesn't get their chance on offense if a touchdown scored. But
sometimes,
So, and hockey in the regular season, they've got the shootout. Before that, they have the 3-on-3 overtime. So other leagues do different things during the regular seasons that they won't do in the playoffs. I think this is a great idea for the NBA. And how many games go into overtime in the NBA in the regular season? I don't think it's that many anyway.
No. It would be a good. That's the good idea. Yep. All right. I didn't watch 1 second of the NBA All-Star Game. I didn't watch any of the dunk contest. I didn't watch any of the 3-point shootout. I just saw the highlights. I was totally uninterested by it, to be honest.
The National Hockey League.
Can we talk about hockey?
I would love to talk about hockey. The NHL trading deadline is approaching.
I don't even want to talk about that. For some reason, I have no interest in the NHL trade deadline this year. None.
I'll tell you why. Because it is the most made-for-TV thing ever. I looked at the list. Of like the potential players that could move. There's no one of consequence really in the whole list. Like they named like 50 players. None of them are game breakers. You know, the number one, when you look at like TSN, like you look at their link of like trade bait, like who's the number one guy that like is the most interesting, it's Chris Kreider. I mean, like Chris Kreider's a nice player. He's a big guy, he can skate, he's got over 20 goals this year. I get it. He's nice. But like Chris Kreider's not going to put you over the top. I'm sorry. He's just not. Like if you're an elite team, you're an elite team. I don't think this guy's going to make or break your season. You know, he's a nice addition, but like they're going to talk about him for 4 hours on Tuesday.
So I say this every year, but you know, there's a bunch of teams that are going to make trades at the deadline, but only one of them is going to win the Stanley Cup. So that means all the others wasted their time. And if I look back, the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup last year. I don't recall them making any significant trade at the deadline last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall any significant trade that they made at the deadline.
I think you're right.
Now, what I do want to talk about is the Montreal Canadiens, because luckily they've been losing more than they've been winning lately. Few strange things have happened. I thought Shea Weber broke his ankle and was out for the year, and then all of a sudden, 2 days later, he's back playing hockey. So I don't know exactly how that happens, but whatever.
That was fake news. That was Nick Kypreos.
Hold on, so he didn't break his ankle? You mean that part was fake?
No, Shea Weber had an ankle injury.
Yeah.
And Nick Kypreos reported that it's much more serious than the Canadiens are saying, and his career could be over.
Oh, okay. Who does Nick Kypreos work for now? I haven't seen him anywhere.
Sportsnet.
He does? I haven't seen him on Sportsnet at all.
So then that same day, Canadiens come out and said Weber's seen the doctor and he's out 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. Then 2 days later, Weber's skating. He's skating, and then he's playing. So I don't know. Honestly, I think most Canadiens fans wish he didn't play and they would just lose all the rest of the games. They're actually trying to win.
Well, I mean, the players are always going to try to win, and the head coach is always going to try to win.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's nothing you can do about that. And I don't want them to lose on purpose, but I would like them to finish as low in the standings as possible to have as good a draft pick as possible, because this season is basically done. This is the time of the year where NHL fans and NBA fans all say about their teams, if their team isn't going to make the playoffs, they all say, well, we always have next year. But to be honest, I don't even think the Canadiens are going to be good next year either.
I was thinking the same thing. You read my mind, because when you look at their team, they have a lot of nice young players that could start to develop. You know how much of a fan I am of Nick Suzuki. I think he's going to be a star. But, I mean, they're not going to be significantly better unless they make some kind of crazy free agent move, which is so unlikely. And the thing is, they're in the same division with Toronto and Boston and Tampa next year. The things are not going to change. Tampa and Boston are not all of a sudden going to become bad, you know? And you can say what you want about the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're having a completely average season. They're not a great hockey team. They're a good hockey team. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, as long as they have Tavares and Marner and Matthews and Nylander, like that's going to be a good team. It's not like they're going to all of a sudden suck. Like the Leafs are not going to suck. The Leafs are going to be good, whether they're cup contenders. You can debate that till the cow comes home. I think even the most hardcore Leaf fan will tell you they're not Stanley Cup contenders. But like I just don't see the Canadiens being good for the next few years, to be honest.
Yeah. And I don't know how many years Claude Julien has left on his contract, but this guy is not the coach for this team. I mean, whatever, finish the season, whatever. But he's like, they need someone different behind the bench. I don't know who, but they need somebody.
Look, I couldn't stand Michel Therrien. I wanted him fired immediately. I never wanted him to be hired in the first place. Couldn't wait for them to fire him. And then the only reason why I was happy that Julien became the coach is because they fired the other coach, right? So at least we had someone new. But I never liked Julien from the start. And I remember I had a Facebook discussion with some guy that I didn't know on a friend's Facebook feed after Julien's first game behind the bench as a Canadiens coach, where this guy was saying, look at the difference. He's playing all the guys. He's playing young players. Like, this guy was like, had blinders on. And I was like, dude, you know the Who song? Here's the new boss, same as the old boss. It's the same thing. Nothing's changed. You know, you think this guy is some kind of like a genius, Julien? He's the same thing. I don't know how much a coach affects or doesn't affect. We've debated this many, many times, but they need some kind of new blood behind the bench. Someone with an idea, someone with a clue about how to play hockey in 2020, because that's not Claude Julien. It's just not. I'm sorry, it's just not.
So I've said to you many times that in every sport, the coach gets too much blame when the team loses and too much credit when the team wins, because a lot of it has to do with the players you have on your roster. I mean, if Claude Julien was coaching the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Boston Bruins, it would be a different story, although he actually was the coach of the Boston Bruins not that long ago. But anyway, my point is this. So yes, I don't want to lay all the blame on Claude Julien, because there are some players on the team that are borderline NHL players and maybe wouldn't be in the league if they were on another team. Having said that, the Canadiens have had 2 8-game losing streaks in the same season. I don't know any coach in the history of hockey that has had 2 8-game losing streaks in one season and not been fired. I can't think of one.
That's why I think he's not going to get fired. And even next year, he's still going to be the coach, because I thought after the first 8-game losing streak, I'm like, man, this guy could get fired. He could get fired tomorrow. I remember after when they had the 9th game, I was like, man, if he loses tonight, he could get fired. And then he didn't. And then they had another 8-game losing streak, but it was like in the city, it was like, oh, it's just another 8-game losing streak. We already had one of those. We already had one of those. So it was like, and then they had a 5-game losing streak recently. So like, Josh, I don't like the guy. I never wanted him to be the coach, and I don't know who will be the coach, but they need. Anyways, we'll see what happens at the trading deadline. I have a feeling they're not going to trade anybody. They're going to hang on to all the veterans. The organization still thinks they can win next year, and it's tough times. Let me tell you, it's tough times as the Montreal Canadiens fan. Really tough times.
So I have 2 questions for you. You know how I think last week you mentioned that some people have way too much time on their hands, and some guy created this website where you can go and look at how many times someone banged on a garbage can, okay? So along those lines, it's nothing to do with baseball, but I'm sure someone has done this, and maybe you know the answers. 2 questions. 1, has someone counted the number of times the Canadiens have given up a goal with less than a minute left in a period? That's the first question. And the second question is, how many times have the Canadiens blown a 3-goal lead this year? Now, both of those things, before you even answer the questions, both of those things, I think, have to do with coaching. Both of them, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. Look, I don't have the answer. There's people, you can find the answers to these questions easily. How many times did they blow a 3-goal lead? You could look it up. I could look it up now and just go through the schedule, and I can probably tell you. And how many times they scored goals at the end of periods or with 2 minutes to go? Oh, it's staggering. It's staggering the amount. And now you want to throw a third thing on, which is coaching. They lead the league in too many men on the ice penalties also. So that's directly coaching. 100%. And I want to know, I'm going to give a shout out to my Uncle Lenny, who you know very well. Every time I ask him, did you watch the Canadiens game? Every time I ask him, did you watch the Canadiens? He tells me the same answer. He's like, Avi, this team, it gives me so much. It gives me so much stress. I'm so disappointed with this team. Every game, it's the same thing. They're always giving up goals with 2 minutes left in a period. They're always giving up goals with 2 minutes left in the game. He goes, it's the same story. Every game is the same story, and we have the same conversation all the time. And it's astounding that this happens. And yes, it's coaching. But when Claude Julien was asked about this week, he deflected it onto the players. He said, we're not able to play 60 minutes. For some reason, this team is not able to play more 60-minute game. We're only able to play 40 minutes. And he's kind of deflecting it away from himself and putting it all as if somehow the players don't want to play 60 minutes. They can't put a 60-minute effort. Somehow only the players are at fault for the team not able to be playing a full 60-minute game. As if the coaches are just sort of bystanders standing there, like, unable to do anything about it, you know?
By the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because I heard some interviews after the last game. The Canadiens actually beat the Washington Capitals somehow. And
they still gave up a goal with 20 seconds left in the game.
Exactly, yeah. So someone in the locker room, I think it was Dano, who said, well, yeah, we played a full 60 minutes tonight. Actually, we played 61 because it went into overtime. And I'm saying to myself, well, no, you didn't, because you didn't play the last minute of regulation time. So what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just sad times here, Josh. I can't wait for like the playoffs to start so we can stop talking about the Canadiens. We can actually start looking at like good teams, and maybe watch some playoff hockey, so I think there's a lot of good storylines out there. The Bruins are an amazing team. Tampa is on fire right now. The Leafs, like, how can they actually win a series? Pittsburgh, wow, they look amazing. Does Crosby have one more Stanley Cup run in him? Ovechkin, can he do it again? The Capitals seem to be like also in a great position. And then that's just the East. And then what about the West? St. Louis is the most under the radar defending champion ever. They're like the best team in the West still, and I don't think they can be beaten, to be honest.
I have one more Canadiens question for you because I read a headline last night that on my feed, on my phone, that said Carl Alsner has been called up on an emergency basis. So my question to you is, what was the emergency?
They have a lot of injuries.
Do they?
Well, they sent down Cale Fleury, and they don't want to call him back up, I guess. And they had a bunch of injuries on the blue line. Mete's hurt, and then Xavier Ouellet was called up from Laval. He got injured. So, like, they just don't have enough bodies. Like, they just don't have enough bodies on defense. So they called up Alsner. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Anyway, that's a nothing move. So one last hockey point, and then we can go to something else if you'd like, or we can end the show if you'd like.
Sure.
So remember we were talking about Ovechkin and how he needs, I think, like 200 goals to break Wayne Gretzky's record, and he's now at 699.
Since we had that conversation, sorry to interrupt you. Since we had that conversation, he's only scored one goal, I think.
Right, exactly. And I said, and you agreed with me, that obviously, Gretzky had the advantage of playing in a different era where there were a lot more goals.
Right.
There is one thing that Ovechkin has the advantage currently that Gretzky didn't have, and that is now the players have much better hockey sticks.
Oh, it's not even fun. It's not. Go look at. You know how I feel about Gretzky, right? But like when Gretzky was playing, they were using wood sticks.
Yeah. I cannot imagine what Gretzky would have done or Lemieux would have done if they had the sticks that they have today. It would not be safe.
When they first came out, so now the sticks are all kind of composite material. I don't know what they're made out of, but they're made out of all kinds of stuff, right? The most lightweight material that's also flexible and also durable. Like they've got technology in the sticks like crazy. But remember when those first sticks came out, Gretzky had that aluminum stick. It was aluminum, right? Like they would never make an aluminum stick now. Like that's just out of the question because they have so many better things. But when Gretzky was on the Kings, he had that silver aluminum stick and it was all shiny. And they had the black and silver uniforms. It was so beautiful. It was like the stick was matching him. And you know how I feel about Gretzky. Like the greatest play ever in hockey to watch is when Gretzky took a slap shot.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got about hockey.
That's good stuff about hockey. Good stuff. So are you going to watch the trading deadline at all?
There's a TV at my desk at work, so it'll be on. But I mean, I'm not going to be focused on it. Are you going to watch?
Gotcha. I'll follow it like on my phone. I'm curious to see like if the Canadiens are going to trade Tatar, Petrie. Like there's a lot of Kovalchuk. Like let's see what happens, right? So.
By the way, you mentioned Thomas Tatar. Did you know what his nickname is?
It's Tuna.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was laughing hysterically.
At one point, the Bell Center announcer was saying that, I think. When
he's one of the stars of the game, they say Thomas the Tuna Tatar.
Yeah, I know. It's funny.
I think it's hilarious.
But I don't think that started here. I think that nickname probably has followed him around for a while.
I never heard it until like a month ago. But then again, who knows? He wasn't playing in this city, so... Well, he wasn't playing in your city, I mean.
Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
Do you have anything to leave the listeners with? I have one kind of cute little item.
I have something, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, and maybe I'm...
Well, last week you told everybody that your favorite store is Kitchen Stuff Plus, so if you're embarrassed about this, I can't wait to hear what it is.
Well, that wasn't embarrassing. That's just whatever. But this is like old news, I think, and I just found out this week. So, I mean, maybe I'm the only one that just found out. Who knows? But I've been seeing these commercials for this new documentary on HBO called McMillions about the whole monopoly scandal at McDonald's. Have you heard about this?
I've heard about the scandal, but I did not hear about this documentary. I would love to see it because McDonald's monopoly is like something that we've actually participated in our household here. It's like a big deal for us sometimes.
So anyway, I haven't seen any of the documentary. I don't know how many parts it is. I don't even get HBO, but apparently, like when they were playing the McDonald's Monopoly, there was some sort of scam going on where it was impossible to win. And I didn't even know about this till just this week. So I don't know if I'm like living under a rock or something, but I just found this hilarious.
Nothing to be embarrassed about. I think this is most news that a lot of people don't know about. But yeah, there was some kind of scandal. I would love to see that documentary. I'm going to try to find it, although I don't get HBO, but there's always some gray areas of how to get things. So speaking of television, I'm watching a show that is actually right now the best show on TV. And it's a show that's been on for 20 years, and I have not watched for the last 10 years.
Really? Why? I can't think of a show that's been on that long.
Survivor. So I remember, I used to watch Survivor, right? But like I literally have not watched for 10 years, which means I have not seen the last 20 seasons because there's 2 seasons a year, right? They have 40 seasons. So for the 40th season now and the 20th year, they've brought back 20 contestants, all who have previously won the game. Everybody on this season of Survivor is a winner, a previous winner. So it's like the all-stars of all-stars. And there are some, I don't like, as I just told you, I don't know who half of them are because I haven't watched the last 20 seasons. But there are some old-timers from when I did watch, and it's actually a pleasure to watch them. And the show is absolutely fantastic. So I know people are probably laughing at me right now, whatever, but if you ever watched Survivor and if you ever thought it was good, you should watch Survivor now because it's 10 times better than it ever was with this cast of characters.
Okay, well, people should heed your advice and go watch that show.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got. Talk to you next time.
Yeah, that's all I got. Have a good week.